Why I married my uncle. I was trapped in a life I never chose. This is the story of the regret that haunts my every step, and I swore never to forgive my father. My father, tradition, and custom took my future from me. The life I should have lived was stolen, and for that I will not forgive him. This is the story of my life. My name is Chidalu. I am from a quiet village that is surrounded by beautiful fields and tall whispering trees. And the name of the village is Omuama community, where traditions and custom of the land shape the life of his people from birth to death, from generation to generation. My parents, Mr. and Mrs. Sadebe, were just a peasant farmers living in the community. They had four sons already before they gave birth to me as the first daughter and the fifth child of the family, and they named me Chidalo. They were not financially buoyant, but my father was a man who loved and respected tradition and custom of the land so much. And my father had always have this particular friend called Papa Obikwe. Papa Obikwe was an elderly man who has always been fond of my father, and he always says to my father that he wished that my father had a daughter that can be his son's wife. So when I was finally born, he was so excited. So on that fateful day, Papa Obikwe came visiting just to see the family and also congratulate my father and my mother for the birth of their first daughter, which happens to be me. And he also presented a gift to me. So when it was time for him to leave, he requested that my father should accompany him. So as my father was seeing him off, he turned to my father and said to him, Osadebe, I've always known you as a man that is deeply rooted in our culture. So by now you should know that your daughter will be betrothed to a man who will later become her husband. And you know I have always wished for us to be in-laws. And now that your daughter had arrived, I would like her to be betrothed to my son Obikwe, who is just 30 years old, a well-mannered young man, and is also doing well as a trader. And Osadebe replied him and said, my friend, you have spoken well. I've always known you to be from a good family, a family with good reputation. And I will be glad if my beautiful daughter will be married into your family. And Papa Biko responded and said, very good, my friend. At least that our friendship will be more solidified. And my father told him that he will have to discuss with his family and elders and know when it will be convenient for them to come for the marriage rite. So on that Eke market day, the elders of Umwama community, Obikwe and his father gathered in my father's compound to perform the marriage rites between Obikwe and me. And I was just 2 months old, and Obikwe was 30 years old. My mother was carrying me on her hands. My father was standing close to my mother, and Papa Obikwe was standing beside his son Obikwe, among other villagers, as they conversed with my father Osadebe. And Papa Obikwe handed over some bag of coin and gift, sealing the betrothal between me and Obikwe. There was a ceremonial exchange of kola nut, and the village prince offered blessings for the union. And Obikwe promised my parents that when I turned 5 years of age, that I will be raised under his care, and that he will nurture me like a father, that he will provide for my education, shelter, feeding, and training, with the expectation that I will one day become his wife when I start seeing my monthly flow. As the year passed, I became so curious. I had a vibrant spirit. My laughter echoed through the village, and my curious nature made everyone smile. I blossomed into a bright and talented girl. I was already 5 years old, and I started living with Obikwe, who enrolled me in the finest dressmaking school in the village, where I can become a skilled seamstress under the watchful eye of Madame Informa, the best dressmaker in the region. Obikwe provided me with everything that I needed. He gave me the best of clothes, food, and tools for my training as a seamstress. To me, then, he was simple, a kind uncle, someone who had taken me in where my parents could not provide for me. I adored my work as a seamstress apprentice, and my skills with fabric became known through the village. My designs were colorful and unique. I dream of one day opening my own dressmaking shop filled with my creation. But beneath my busy hands and joyful spirit, I never understood the true reason why Mazo Bukwe, my uncle, was so invested in my future. Over the years, I came to know Bukwe as my lovely uncle. He was always there for me, providing guidance, and I trusted him with my life. But as I grew older, something inside of me began to stir a feeling of unease that I could not explain. Sometimes I would watch my uncle Obukwe watching me with a weird look in his eyes, which I did not quite understand. But I will always brush it off, thinking it was just the concern of a protective uncle. So there is this very handsome guy called Eze that normally likes to be with me. He will always come to the shop during my closing hour and will offer to walk me home. And at the time, I began to develop feelings for him because I knew that he had feelings for me too. I was already 14 years old, and anytime my uncle sees us together, he always feels unease and unhappy. And one day, my uncle Obiekwe couldn't take it anymore. He called me and asked me what I have with Eze. I told him that he is just a friend, and he said better because any day he will find out that I have something to do with Eze sexually, that he will cut off my ears and send me back to my parents, and we never come back to his house again. He was so angry. He scolded me and asked me to stay away from Eze. I have never seen him in such a furious mood. I was so scared and I had to heed to his warning and stayed away from Eze. And it was because of his warning that I knew that my parents were still alive, but don't even know how to locate them. So when I turned 16 years old, a quiet tension began to fill up Bukwe's thought. And I noticed that he always looked somehow, who has a lot of things but could not voice it out. And anytime he comes close to say something, he always withdraw his statement. He will watch me from afar, knowing the time had come for him to reveal the truth. On the evening of my graduation and birthday, after a small celebration in the house, Obikwe, my uncle, called me to sit with him in his room, that he has something important to tell me, that it is for the good of both of us. Now, Obikwe, 46 years old, calmly but with a romantic approach, called me. When I entered his room, he said, Chidalu, there is something I have kept from you for many years. A truth that by tradition I can no longer hide it from you. And I was curious and a little nervous. I nodded my head as I sat beside him. He called me again, Chidalu, and I responded, Yes, uncle. What is it, uncle? Hope everything is okay. Obikwe took a deep breath. His voice was steady but carried the weight of years. I am not just the man who raised you, Chidalo. I am your husband. And it is time for you to start performing your duty for me as my wife. Your parents betrothed you to me when you were just a baby. I have waited up till now for you to mature according to our custom to tell you the truth. You are my wife. I laughed and clapped my hands, and I said to him, Uncle, I do not understand what you are saying. He repeated the same statement with so much relief. I said that you are my wife. And to make it worse, he stood up, opened his hands with a lovely smile that looked so scary to me. And he said, Please, Chidalu, my wife, come and give your husband a hug. I have waited so much for this day. Then my uncle Bikwe started touching me sexually and was surprised and scared. I fought with him. It was as if the whole world had stopped for me. The man I had known as my protector, my guardian, was telling me that I am his wife. My stomach churned with disbelief, anger, and confusion. My voice was trembling. Uncle, you are joking, right? No, no, no. That cannot be true. You have always been like a father to me. How can this be? There is no way I can ever see you as my lover and a husband. This is an abomination. I was crying and shouting profusely, and I continued. I am going to shout until someone comes in and get me out of here. God forbid, you can never be my husband. You must be out of your senses. You are a package from the devil to come ruin my happy life. Why did you make such callous agreement with my parents? What rights do you people have to make such decision for me? I was crying uncontrollable because I knew how strong our culture is, but never knew that I am a victim. Mazobikwe now said, "Please, my dear, do not waste your energy. Our neighbors already know that you are my wife. This is our way, Chidalo. It is the custom of our people. You were promised to me long ago and have waited until this day for you to become my wife. It was at that time that I understood that I was in a deep mess because of custom, tradition, and my parents. My heart was broken. Tears streamed down my face as I ran out into the night. I thought of where to run to at that time of the night. My dream, my freedom shattered by the weight of tradition I never agreed to. I ran away from the house, not knowing where to run to at that dead hour of the night, but later decided to run to my seamstress instructor's place and reported the issue to Madame Ifoma that my uncle wanted to rape me. Madame Ifoma listened to me quietly, her heart heavy with sympathy. She knew the chains of tradition. Many women in the village had lived similar life, bound by expectation of the ancestors. For days, I stayed with Madame Ifoma, my sewing instructor, seeking comfort and guidance. I told her everything about Mazio Bukwe's revelation and the suffocating feeling of having my life decided for me without my consent. And Madame Informa tried her best to calm me down. So after my second day in her house, she called me for us to discuss the issue. Madame Informa, she took a deep breath and she called me by my name. Chidalu. I know this is hard to accept. It is not the life you wanted. But our customs are strong. And you can choose to fight them, but it will be a battle you may not win. Or you can find a way to live with them, even if your heart is not in it. And the woman, knowing about everything, explained to me that my uncle Ebikwe is not my uncle but my husband, that it is normal according to our tradition. And then I refused to go home until Madam Ifoma called Obikwe that I am in her house so that he can come and explain everything to me properly and to take me home. And Obikwe came to Madam Ifoma's house and tried his best to convince me, but all fell abortive because I kept saying, "No, I will not allow my uncle to touch me. No, it is an abomination. I cannot do that." So they decided to take me to the village to find my parents so they could explain everything to me. But when we got to the village, we met only my mother, who hardly recognized me, and my father, who gave me out in marriage, was already late. My mother fell into tears, seeing how terrifying I was. She quickly understood that the whole secret had been disclosed. I was about starting to ask her what really happened, and she immediately said to me, "My daughter, please forgive me. I never wanted that for you as my first daughter. I objected, but your father refused and said it is in line with our culture. Forgive me, my daughter. You know that women do not have say in our culture. There is nothing that we can do now. He is your husband, and you have to learn to live with him throughout the rest of your life." And upon hearing this, I fell down weeping uncontrollably. "I cannot marry him. He's my uncle. For Christ's sake. No, 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 it can't be." With the whole explanation, I refused to accept the fact that the man is my husband. So we were left with no option but to take the case to the king and the elders of the village. After explaining the whole issue, the king, who is now the son of the former king who made the rules, so the present king is more enlightened and soft hearted, more than his father. He felt pity for me and asked me what I wanted, if I wanted to leave the marriage. And I said, yes, I cannot be his wife. I cannot be with this man. I have always seen him as my uncle, just like a father figure. I cannot imagine him touching me as his wife. And one of the elders rebuked me and said, "It is our culture. There is nothing you can do about it. That is how I married my wife." And majority of them there agreed that the same thing is applicable to them. "He is your husband. Go home and bear him children." And I angrily replied them by saying, "No, I will not marry him. It can be." And Nobikwe angrily asked, "What about the money and the time that I have spent on her? From feeding to training, I've always seen her as my wife, and I was just waiting for her to be ripe for marriage. And now she is matured, I cannot lose her." And the king said that I should not be forced to marry who I do not want. And the elders refused, and they noticed that the king does not want to change his judgment. And one of the elders whispered to the king, and the king changed his decision and said, "Okay, to be fair to both of you, this is my judgment. Chidalu, if you do not want to marry and be with Obikwe, you and your family has to pay all that he has spent on you." And Obikwe mentioned a huge amount of money. And the king said that I and my family has to pay the money. And my mother fell on the floor, crying. "Chidalu, I have pleaded with you to accept this man, that it is in line with our culture. It is not a crime. My husband, your father, married me the same way, and we lived happily until his departure. Where can I get this huge amount of money? Even though I sell myself and everything that I own, it will not still be enough." And I replied, "I cannot marry this man. I will run away," I shouted with tears rolling down my eyes. And one of the elders, "No, my daughter, if you do so, your mother and your siblings will be banished out of this community." And my mother was crying, and she pleaded and continued pleading, "My daughter, do not allow them to do this to me." Obikwe came to me and said, "Please, my wife." I replied and shouted, "Who is your wife? Do not ever you call me that again. I am not your wife, and I will never be your wife." And Obikwe continued, "I will treat you well. I will protect you with my life, just the way I have been protecting you." And I angrily left the palace and went home. For since then that I slept in my father's house, I never uttered a word to my mother, because I was so angry and disappointed that she never protected me as a mother. And the king's messenger kept coming to the house to remind me that I have only 7 days to repay Obikwe's money or to go back to his house to be a good wife to him, or my family will be banished. And my mother continued pleading, and also my younger siblings pleading as well, that they do not want to be banished. After much pleading, I was left with no choice, because I do not have that kind of money that Obikwe claimed that he spent on me, and no place to run to, because anyone I narrated the story to always tells me that it is in line with our tradition, that it's not a taboo. So I decided to go back to Obikwe to be his wife. So when I got to Obikwe's house, it was so difficult for me to see him differently as my husband and not an uncle. He welcomed me back and was very happy that I finally accepted him as my husband. Obikwe tried his best to make me happy and comfortable, but his effort wasn't good enough for me. And I kept murmuring every minute, every hour, and every day. How could they do this to me? I wish that the earth should open and swallow me so that everything would come to an end. I disliked everything about him, but people kept advising me that I should try to live happily with him, that with time I will adjust and be happy with him, and also appreciate my parents for making a good decision for me. But such thing never happened. I was a shadow of myself. I later gave birth to 4 children for him, but even at that, I never enjoyed my marriage. And I knew that I will never enjoy my marriage because I was always cold. kept things to myself, always sad. I was never free with him. He later departed from this world at the age of 76 years. I always blame my father and tradition who decided my life for me without my consent. I swore with my life that such thing will never happen to any of my daughters. They should be allowed to grow and make their decision for themselves. Thank you all for watching. Please do comment, subscribe, and share. I love you all. Thank you.